Hello and welcome to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. Today's reading is Chapter 15 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy. Elgin wakes up on Green Comet for the first time, 80 years after going down for hibernation. He has fur, improved eyesight, and, surprisingly, wings. Waking is very disorienting. He meets Stanton, his minder and future boss. Now then, it has been a while since I have asked you to do anything, such as subscribe or like this video. Subscribing takes a few clicks. Liking takes just one. It's simple. Just click the thumb up and you will have liked the video. Okay, that's that for that then. Here we go.
Chapter 15. Elgin meets Stanton. The populating of Green Comet was done in such a rush that the assignment of hibernation rotation had to be done by lottery, only taking the time to make sure that no families were broken up. Even then, some friendships suffered because they had to apply an arbitrary cutoff in deciding. One went down and the other stayed up, unless the one staying up opted to start the voyage in hibernation. None of that concerned Elgin. He was on his own, so whichever shift he drew was all right with him. There was no one among the 10,000 that he couldn't bear to be separated from because he wasn't that close to any of them. He was here on his own because there wasn't anyone to come with him. His mother died when he was young. It was something sudden, some accident while she was skiing with his father. Elgin never heard much about it because his father wouldn't talk to him. He was an only child, and they weren't close to their relatives. His friendships were good, but that was all. Most importantly, by his mid-20s, he hadn't met a woman who could have made him stay. So Elgin started the adventure in hibernation. He drew the 5th rota, meaning he would be asleep for 80 years before he had his first 20 years of active duty. While he was sleeping, the first 4 shifts would secure and consolidate the habitat that was prepared by the advance crew, and begin the construction of further expansion. They made the comet habitable, well on the way to comfortable. It was nearly a self-sustaining ecosystem. By the time Elgin got up, the majority of the big projects were done. The living areas were excavated and sealed off, and were filling up with buildings. The corridors joining the cavities were finished and airtight. The plumbing was operational, and just needed a little fine-tuning. Air circulation and temperature control were almost completely automatic. The hydroponics were self-sustaining, providing a continuous supply of food, supplemented by the meat lab, where they were forever perfecting texture and mouthfeel. And, to everyone's delight, the algal mats were healthy and spreading on the walls. Everyone loved the fruiting bodies that were engineered into the algal genome, the iceberries that they could pluck and eat any time. Iceberries weren't just a sweet snack. In addition to a good sugar content, they also had fat and protein and vitamins. They were the closest thing ever to a complete food. Nutritionists predicted that a person could live a normal life eating nothing but iceberries. Parents never worried whether their children were eating properly because they always had the ideal snack growing on the walls. In addition to all their other redeeming qualities, iceberries tasted good and had the most delicious aroma. Everyone who started the trip in hibernation woke up with fur and enhanced eyesight. Elgin's cohort was the second to have wings. When they went to sleep, they didn't know they were going to wake up with wings, but when the idea looked achievable, everyone who was awake at the time agreed that it would be best. They would be making modifications to the bodies of people who had no say in it, but they knew that was how they would have wanted it if conditions were reversed. If they woke up to find that they could have had wings but didn't, they knew they would have been disappointed. On the whole, the ones who woke up with them were delighted. After the surprise and shock, they saw that it was a good and useful modification, especially after using them for a while. Elgin certainly had no problem with it, and most people agreed it was a good idea, even though it was done without their consent. But not everyone. A small but significant minority protested that it should not have been done without their permission. Only a handful felt strongly enough to demand a return to hibernation, But such was the common sense of justice and freedom on the comet that they decided no major changes would be made to anyone's body without their conscious approval from then on. Elgin's first experience of waking from hibernation was nothing like waking from ordinary sleep. It took longer, it was very disorienting, and at times it was decidedly unpleasant. First there was the grayness, and the realization of being aware of it. No prelude, no consciousness of any kind of anything before, and then a gray world that felt as if it had always been there. Soon there were flickers and flashes of bright light, always in his peripheral vision, never where he was looking. And that was a novel concept, that he could be looking in any particular direction. It immediately divided his vision into what he was looking at in front of him, another new idea, and other things that he couldn't see. While the bright white lights were at the periphery, the splashes and explosions of fractured color came in his central vision. They caught his attention and held it, because they didn't seem random. He was sure the colored shapes had meaning. He thought he could see purpose and intention in their relationships and their movements. Elgin was also experiencing smells, but they seemed to get in under his cognitive awareness. His brain knew they were there, and his body no doubt reacted to them, but they didn't bother his conscious mind with it. But with his skin there was no overlooking it. Sharp, pricking sensations jabbing random parts of his body at unpredictable times, wandering waves of itching, tingling and numbness trading locations haphazardly. As strange as these sensations were, the one that struck Elgin the funniest happened deep down at the bottom of his ear canals. By this time he was conscious enough to locate it as part of him. The time of not knowing enough to separate his self from his sensations was over, so he was able to recognize it as sound and to tell that it was happening inside his ears. He still couldn't make it out, but there was something about it that was reassuring. The tone and cadence made him feel safe and well cared for. But it still sounded funny because, at least for the first few minutes, instead of appearing to come from an outside source, the sounds were tiny and all gathered down by his eardrums. Elgin drifted off to sleep, wondering about the nature of reality as it's assembled by the brain, how our sensations become our perceptions. He alternated between sleeping and waking for the next few days. Each time he woke up, his senses were closer to normal, and each time he slept, his dreams were less chaotic. He met the man who was looking after him, learned his name was Stanton, recognized his voice as the comforting noise from the first day. When he was able to organize the croaking and gargling in his throat into a serviceable voice, he asked Stanton if that was his first name or his last. He learned that everyone was using single names. They might choose their first name or their last, or they might make something up. They called their chosen name their comet name, and it was their identification for all purposes. Stanton, whose name was pronounced with a glottal stop, attended to Elgin effectively and efficiently. He gave Elgin what he needed at each stage of his waking, both providing for his physical needs and answering his questions clearly and completely. He explained that each citizen of the comet was required to do this for at least one other, so that everyone got a sense of how important it was. But he added that he had specifically requested to be Elgin's minder, as the job was called. He'd studied the dossiers of many people and learned that Elgin was an engineer and a very good one. His record showed a level of understanding that normally only came after many more years of experience. Though only in his mid-20s, Elgin had the competence and had taken on the responsibilities that a good career engineer usually didn't have until his 40s. Stanton explained that he was the lead engineer on the project to join the Comets, and that he wanted Elgin on his team. "Me?" said Elgin. "Are you sure?" "Sure enough to be your minder," said Stanton. "Sure enough to put you on the job." He smiled. It was friendly, but a little hard, too. "Whether you will stay will depend on you." Elgin swallowed. "But there must be plenty of other engineers, ones with experience." "You mean older?" "Yes, but I really mean experience with comets." "I've got a few of those," Stanton said, nodding. "And they're good at their jobs, don't get the idea that they're not. But I need more than that. I need someone who can see beyond the plans, someone who can imagine doing the job a different way if necessary." He smiled again, but this time it had a bit of a challenge in it. "Most of all, I need someone who can look at my work and tell me when I've made a mistake." "Oh," said Elgin, not quite sure if he wanted this challenge. "I've checked, Elgin. Every place you've worked they've given you glowing reports." "Yeah, well, more importantly, there were a couple of controversies, and some resentment among other older engineers." "Well, you disagreed with them, didn't you?" "Well, you told people who have years more experience than you that they were wrong, didn't you?" "Yes, but—" "Never mind, Elgin. I checked. They were wrong." Stanton had a wicked grin. "They were wrong, and you knew that, and you didn't let a little thing like respect for your elders stop you from telling them." "No, I mean I couldn't." Elgin shrugged helplessly. "It was wrong. And that's exactly why I need you." Elgin slid gently into sleep. He was doing a lot of that. These few days seemed to be spent either waking up or falling asleep, with much less time spent conscious than not. He could feel himself smiling as he faded out. This was wonderful. He was offered a job, not only doing what he enjoyed most, but doing what must be one of the most challenging engineering projects ever attempted. What interesting problems there must be in joining two huge comets. And he'd be working directly with the lead engineer. And he'd been chosen specifically, hand-picked for the job. Elgin had plenty to feel good about, and he allowed himself to thoroughly enjoy the feeling as he fell into a soft slumber.